Hi everyone, this is Jennifer Reddington, your Westchester Real Estate Connection. Today I'm sitting here with Tim Furnary, who is an insurance broker with JW Allen. JW Allen helps clients in the city, in Westchester and Connecticut, pretty much anywhere where you might have insurance needs. So Tim is not only a good friend of mine, but he's helped several of my clients with their insurance needs, and I thought he would be the perfect person to talk to us today about flood insurance. That is a dreaded term that many potential buyers hear and they get really scared. And if you're looking to move to the Sound Shore area, particularly communities such as Rye or Mamaroneck, you're likely going to encounter it. So I thought it would be really helpful to have Tim join me today and talk about just some really basic questions. And then if you've got further, more in-depth questions or specific questions to you, I'm gonna put Tim's contact information up at the end and you can reach out to him for further inquiry. So without further ado, Tim, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
No problem.
And the first question I want to talk about is, what are different types of flood zones and how does that affect how much a person would pay in flood insurance?
Okay, so essentially when you're dealing with flood zones, you're really dealing with 5 zones. You got X, C, B, AE, and you got V, okay? These are all very different. X, C, and B are preferred zones, so you will pay the least. You will pay a little bit more. And then V is the no-go. That's where I would recommend that you look at the pricing before you purchase a home. But
because V is waterfront, right?
V is waterfront, essentially in the water. It is the zones where mostly we see those out on Long Island. So that is not a Westchester or Fairfield County area that would be an issue. Essentially that means that you are about an 80% chance of flooding, and you will know if you're in those zones before you proceed.
So what you didn't say is that an AE zone, which I feel like we really see a lot throughout Rye, throughout Mamaroneck, that's not really a scary zone.
It's not a scary zone in the sense that it is more expensive than your preferred zones, X, C, or B, but it is completely doable. It is a matter of, when the home was built, whether or not there are flood vents. If you do not have a basement, which is pretty common in a zone, you actually will pay a pretty reasonable amount. In the grand scheme of things, when you're looking at your mortgage, it's probably less than a few percentage points on your overall cost. So it's not something you should be afraid of at all. I think it's incredibly common around here and easy to get insurance.
Which is important.
And keep in mind that most of these policies are transferable. So if you have a policy in place, or if the former owner has a policy in place, we can usually transfer that at the same rate.
That's actually really important and would be really easy, I think, for a potential buyer. Maybe saving them some money.
It could potentially save them money depending on when that flood policy was placed. And there are also, aside from the federal government National Flood Insurance Program, there are private flood options out there that can save you money. But that's really something you need to speak to an independent broker about whether that makes sense for you. But overall, when you're having a lender, don't be afraid about flood insurance. Just have a conversation in advance.
Are there other factors besides the type of zone that would affect how much you pay? Like elevation certificate, for example. We hear that term a lot.
That is a very important piece of it. If you have an A zone or a V zone, but let's call it A or AE zone, which is the most common sort of what I would consider, for lack of a better term, danger zone. You absolutely need an elevation certificate. In most cases, that's where Jen, as the real estate broker, is really going to be helpful in getting that, because most likely it is on file with the town, or if it's an older elevation certificate, you may need a new one, and that's really the only place where added unwanted costs might come into play. But depending on what the elevation of the home is, that's really going to drive your rate. Also, where your mechanicals in the home are. If they are below the lowest grade within the home, that could affect your rate, because they will consider that a basement even if it is a crawl space. But it's all things that we can we can address
have a
and work
conversation.
out. It is not, there are very few places in the town of Rye where I would say as a professional, don't buy that house because it's in a flood zone. You just need to be aware that it's in a flood zone, aware that an older home may actually have a higher rate because maybe that elevation certificate hasn't been done in a while. But that is something that Jen can help you in getting a new elevation certificate, which is not really that difficult to do.
No.
And also on newer construction, most of them are being built to address the flood issues. So there's nothing to be concerned about there. It's just a matter of you're going to have flood insurance because of the lender.
So this may seem like kind of a basic question, but if you're a potential buyer looking to purchase in a flood zone and you're seeking financing, is flood insurance required?
Flood insurance is only required if you are in an A, AE, or a V zone, essentially. X, C, and B, you would not be required to have it. Those are considered preferred zones, and those I can very specifically say would be about $499 a year. I think it is a good risk management tool. One aspect I would bring, if you're buying a new home that is in an X zone today, given that the federal government is constantly changing flood maps, it may be a good idea to purchase the flood insurance because if you were ever to sell the home and the zone was remapped to an A zone, for example, which is more expensive, you may be able to transfer that policy to the new owner at the preferred rate. But these are all things that conversations with people like Jen and myself will allow you to manage.
So finally, why do you think it's important to work with an insurance broker that is local and is familiar with the area?
Well, one, most importantly, an independent broker like myself allows you to access multiple markets. So while you do have the National Flood Insurance Program that we're all very familiar with, and we all know that it exists, there are private markets available. And when our marketing team goes out and quotes a risk, particularly in an A zone or worse, we will always benchmark it against the National Flood Program and provide private markets. But I think also, I know most of the homes in Rye. I've seen most of them. I've lived here for 30 years. I will be able to tell you whether or not you are in a flood zone even before Jennifer can answer that question. Most of it, towns around here, Milton Road, for example, everybody knows it's in a flood zone. Those are all A zones, and they are all easily able to get insurance. There's very few zones in this town you cannot get insurance.
That's one of the things that when I've recommended Tim to several of my clients, I've said he's local. He knows this area. If you've got a problem, you can call him and he can come meet you at your house. He can come as we're looking at a house and sort of talk about risk with you in that initial stage. So I think there are many benefits to using an insurance broker that is local, that knows this area really well. So again, this is just a super basic overview of flood insurance. We could talk about this topic all day. It's really detailed, but I'm gonna put Tim's contact information up so you can reach out to him with any further questions. You can also let me know and I'm happy to make an introduction between the two of you. Any other real estate questions, reach out to me. I'm always available. Thank you so much for listening.